Okay, my dear friends, this is lesson 1.2, and we're talking about adding and subtracting with integers. So we've gone over that integers belong to the set of real numbers, that they are involve all the positive whole numbers, negative whole numbers, and zero. And we did some practice with those, and now adding and subtracting integers. And the one thing that we want to focus on today, we're going to be having a lot of number lines. As you look down your page, you can see a lot of number lines, and zero is there, and we've got integers to the left of zero, we've got integers to the right of zero. And what happens when you add or subtract, sometimes you might be starting here, let's say at positive 4, and subtracting, let's say 8, and you would be crossing over 0 into the negative numbers. And that is where a lot of people find some difficulty. Sometimes maybe you're starting in the negatives and you're adding a positive, and you get into the positive numbers. You cross 0. So we're going to do a little bit of practice with that. We're also going to learn a couple of basic tricks that will help us, and we're going to do it by picturing a number line each time. So your first little section there is pretty straightforward. It's the section where we take a positive number and we add it to a positive number. What is always going to be the outcome when you have a positive number added to a positive number? A positive number. Go ahead and write that in your blank. And again, the examples there are pretty straightforward. We're going to use our number line to think about it each time, and then you can use the space under each question to do the addition problem itself. But number 1 says 3 plus 6. And on our number line, what I want us to do, and obviously this one is really easy and you don't really need a number line, but you're going to put 0 is already there for you. You're basically just going to identify, okay, I'm starting with 3, that's somewhere over here, and I'm adding 6. So I'm adding a positive number, which means I'm moving more to the positive side, and the only thing we're going to do, use this to help us with, is the sign of the answer, the sign of the sum. What is going to be the sign of the sum? Is it going to be a negative or a positive? It's going to be a positive. So we know 3 plus 6 is 9. That was easy. We didn't need the number line to do that. But we're going to use the number line throughout the lesson because the other questions get a little bit trickier. We're going to say, okay, we're starting at a positive number and we're adding. So I'm obviously going to end up in the positive range of things. Okay? So let's take on number 2. Number 2 says 28 plus 75. Now again, you'll notice I didn't write a whole bunch of numbers on the integer line, just a 0, so that it will work with numbers like 3 plus 6, but it will also work with bigger numbers like 28 plus 75. So again, 28, positive or negative? Positive. So I'm starting over here. Plus 75. Am I moving to the left or moving to the right? To the right. So my final answer is going to be positive. Okay, go ahead and write that final answer there. And if you need space underneath, this is how we add things, right? We line up the ones column and the tens column, add our ones, it's 13, carry the 1, 9 plus 1 is 10, with a final answer of 103. We're going to do a lot of focusing this year also on just proper form, nice and neat, spaced out. You can see all your work laid out, so this right here is an example of that. I'm going to let you go ahead and do the third number line on your own and get the answer on your own as well. Alright, if you are done that one, you can check your answer on the board, and it should look something like this. You identified on your number line where you're starting, where you're going, and you added it up with your columns perfectly lined up, and you write your final answer on the line 1826. Good. The next section is the second easiest section, and in that one we're adding a negative number to a negative number. So we have two negative numbers, but we're adding them. So again, if we think about this on our number line, which way are we always, what sign is our answer always going to have if we're starting with a negative number? And are we then moving to the left or to the right?
No, left.
Ooh, let's talk about this.
Negative plus negative.
Left.
Positive.
Right?
But why?
So we're starting with a negative number, so we've taken care of, maybe I'll write our example here. We've got number 1, which is going to be negative 5 plus negative 9. So we're starting down here at negative 5, and we're going to add a negative number.
So you're going left.
So we're going left. Okay? This is the same as negative 5 minus 9. Okay, so we're starting at negative 5, and we're subtracting 9. Adding a negative number is the same as subtracting. So we're heading to the left, and our final answer, no matter what, is going to be negative. So go ahead and write negative on the blank. And we've done number 1 here, really, because we know that we're starting at negative 5, and how much further are we going to move to the left? We're going to move 9 more to the left. So really what we have here is an addition problem, 5 plus 9, but the answer is going to be negative. So really when we're doing negative plus a negative, we can deal with it just like addition, because it's 9 negatives plus 5 negatives, or 5 negatives plus 9 negatives. That gives us 14 negatives. Is that helpful a way to think about it? We're going to continue to use our number line, and we'll move to number 2. Number 2 is negative 56 plus negative 14. So on our number line, where are we starting? To the left of 0 or to the right of 0? We're starting to the left of 0. Again, it doesn't matter where or what you write. And which way are we moving? Yeah, we're getting more negative. That's another good way to think of it. We're getting more negative. So we're heading to the left. We're heading 14 more to the left. So what's our final answer here? Well, we can do it 2 different ways. We can write it out as negative 56 minus 14. Or we can think of it as 56 plus 14, but it's going to be negative. So you'll have 56 plus 14, but it's going to be a negative answer. So our sum is negative 70. Go ahead and try the third one on your own there, and we'll check the board for our answer when we're done. Okay, if you've done number 3, you can check the board here. I switched my numbers. I did 42 plus 1 equals 43 instead of 1 plus 42 equals 43. That's because addition has a property called the commutative property, which means you can put either number first. It doesn't matter. Can you think of another operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, one of those other operations that is also commutative? Multiplication is also commutative, right? 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is also 6. Division is not. Subtraction is not. Okay? Addition and multiplication are commutative. Anyway, I just thought that made more sense. It was easier to write 42 plus 1. And we know it's negative 43 because we're starting to the left of 0 at negative 1. And we're going more negative. 42 more negative, which gives us 43 on the negative side of 0. Good. Looking at the next one, we have a positive plus a negative. Go ahead and think of some of the scenarios in which you would have a positive number plus a negative number. And what is it going to end up as? What's the result going to be? Is the result going to be positive or negative, or can you think of...
Depends.
It depends. Depends on what? Depends on how big the number is. Can someone expand on that?
If the number is closer to 0 and you subtract more than 0,
So if the negative number is greater, then the sum will be negative. If the positive number is greater than the negative number, then the sum will be positive. Nice. So this could be, we can write positive or negative. So here it's not a definite answer. It depends on the numbers themselves. But let's go ahead and look at one. And this is where our number line is going to be helpful. Starting with a real small one here. But we've got negative 2 plus 5. And this is one of those problems that is going to, what we said before, it's going to cross 0. Because we're starting here at negative 2, but we're going forward to the right because it's adding 5. We're going to go to the right 5, which means we're crossing 0. Okay? What are we going to end up with on the other side? We're going to end up at positive 3, which we can just write 3. Good. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says 2 plus negative 18. Now we've got our number line. And we're starting at 2. And which direction are we heading? Left or right?
Left.
Heading to the left. Are we going to cross 0 or no?
Yes.
We're going to cross 0. So the only reason I'm using my number line is to show me that my final answer is going to be negative, because we've crossed 0 from the positives into the negatives. Does anyone know what that final answer is going to be? It's going to be negative 16. Now, how did you do that in your mind? How did you do that in your mind? Yeah, there's a couple different ways to think about it. So some of you are saying, I started with 18 and I subtracted 2, knowing that my final answer was going to be negative. It would be negative 16. Or I started with negative 18 and I added 2. So I know I'm going from negative 18, I'm going to get 2 closer to 0, which is negative 16. Another good way to think about it is if you have 0, and you can think maybe negative 18 looks something like this, you're essentially just pulling, let's say you ended up here at negative 18, you're essentially pulling this whole little piece to the right. So instead of starting at 0, you're starting at 2, you're still going the exact same distance, but now you're going to end up at negative 16 because you've pulled this whole little 2 minus 18 to the right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A couple different ways to think about it. Hopefully the number line is helping you out. Go ahead and do number 3 on your own. Draw your number line, and negative 17 plus 83 is a little bit of a different problem because we didn't start with a positive plus a negative. Instead, we started with a negative plus a positive. So we swapped those two numbers around, the positive and the negative. But again, the same strategy applies on our number line. We're starting somewhere to the left, and the positive number is going to move us to the right. It's going to move us past 0 all the way into the positive numbers. So what I'm essentially doing here, and you can see this by flipping it around, is we're really just doing 83 minus 17. Now, hopefully you remember how to do this kind of problem. Again, if we're subtracting in the ones column, we only have 3, but we need to take away 7. What do we need to do?
Add a 1.
Yeah, we're going to borrow a group of 10s from this group of 8 10s here. We're going to borrow one of them and bring it over here. So we're going to have 13, and here we only have 7 10s left. So now we have 13 minus 7, which is 6. We have 7 minus 1, which is 6. So this is 66, and I know, judging by the number line that I drew, that it's going to be positive. Another tip is my positive number here is bigger than my negative number, has a greater value than my negative number. It's more positive than my negative number is negative. So we're going to end up here at positive 66. There's a little trick to these, and we're going to jot that down right now. We're going to start with the larger number. Whew. Start with the larger number. You're going to subtract the smaller number. Start with the larger number and subtract the smaller number. When you do that, you'll get a value, and you'll know the sign of that value. You're going to use the sign. So your next line is use the sign of the larger answer.
Larger answer?
Sorry, larger number. Larger number. Okay, so that's exactly what we did here. We took 83, subtract 17, the larger number, subtract the smaller number, and we used the sign of the larger number in our answer. And that will work every single time. Okay? I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to go through some of those practice problems, and then we're going to jump back into subtracting integers. So from page 57, your practice problems are number 1 through 56, 63 through 74, 77, and 78. Again, you're not going to be able to finish it at this point, but you'll be able to get it started. So go ahead and do that now, please.